This session is on the book When Sinners Say I Do. I actually have a copy with me here by Dave Harvey, Discovering the Power of the Gospel for Marriage. And excellent book. We have used it for marital counseling. Right now we're using it for premarital counseling, and it's just been really good. And so I've taken a few thoughts from the book just to pass on, because it's about the gospel and marriage, and that's what the workshop is on. By the title you can see When Sinners Say I Do. So one of the main ideas of the book is that we are all sinners, and we need to recognize that. And I am the worst of sinners. I think one chapter it starts out, you wake up with the worst of sinners, and it kind of implies, or it looks like it's talking about the wife, and then you realize, oh, it's me. I am the worst of sinners. I have to deal with it. I blame, I lack patience and love. I make up stories in my head that aren't true and then react to those stories. I judge motives, the motives of my spouse. I fish for credit. Oh, did you see I made the bed today? Or did you see I put away the clothes? Did you see all I did? We just are sinners. It's important to remember that. And sin leads to destruction. Sin has consequences. Sin affects all of us. Even if you're not the one sinning, sin will still affect you. And sin affects your marriage. So prepare yourself. Don't be so surprised when sin happens against you. Don't be shocked. I can't believe you just did that. How often do we have that reaction? Well, believe it, because you married a sinner, and you're a sinner too, and your spouse has to deal with it as well. And because sin affects us, we should learn to live humbly, to look inside ourselves first. Our motives are my motives always pure? If I bought her flowers, or if I did the dishes, or whatever I'm doing, are they pure? I say the dishes because lots of times when I'm mad, I'll go serve. I'll serve something. I'll do the dishes. I'll clean the house. I'll do something and be like, look at me. I'm doing all this stuff in marriage, and this is the treatment I get. But where are the motives? The motives is like, okay, now you just have to make yourself look good, right? That's what I do. But I need to learn to live humbly and look inside. Where are my motives? How am I acting? My wife's been on something lately with asking the question, what is it like to be married to me? And I really haven't answered her yet on this, but it's a very revealing question, to be humble enough to want to know what it is like dealing with me, because we like to paint a perfect picture of who I am I like to paint a perfect picture of who I am as a husband, and the reality is it's not all that easy. Because sin affects us, we should live with integrity, evaluate ourselves, kind of like the questionnaire that we have at the beginning of the workshop, question our own motives, and admit, here's another point, admit your circumstances only reveal what is already in your heart. Okay, so when you got married and all of a sudden you found out you were a bad person, was that shocking to you? Okay, it wasn't because you were a good person beforehand. You just didn't have as many opportunities to see your heart for what it was. Same thing when you had kids and they're up screaming in the middle of the night, and it's like craziness. That impatience, that anger, like for me, it was anger. I was angry as a kid, and I was kind of suppressed for a while. I could hide it for a while, but later on, mainly when I had kids, it came out more often, and it's like, it's not my kid's fault. It's not my wife's fault. It's down here. If I lack patience, it's not because of my wife, it's because of me. If your husband arrives home and walks through the house with dirty shoes for the 100th time and you explode, it's because you exploded because you lack patience. No one forces you to have a bad reaction. Because sin affects us, we should focus on unmerited grace, not on what you think you deserve or your unmet needs. We focus on that. I think two great marriage books are His Needs, Her Needs, and then the 5 Love Languages. Those are great books if you are looking for how to love your spouse better. If you are looking for what is wrong with your spouse and how they treat you, they can lead to a dangerous thinking, because we focus on, oh, it's my needs, those are my needs, that's my love language, they should be doing that. If they're not, how dare them? But with the gospel, we focus on the unmerited grace that we have from God. We focus on being content. We focus on God's love for us and not on what we think we deserve. Because the gospel says you deserve separation from God for eternity. And that's not pretty. But God gives us grace and mercy and kindness anyway. So we need to focus on unmerited grace. Mercy is super important. Forgiveness, we're going to talk more about forgiveness, but your husband will sin. Your wife will sin. Am I going to be forgiving with that, or am I going to constantly throw it in their face? I think that we should have a policy in our marriage of pre-forgiveness. Not necessarily demanding my wife has it, but for myself, I should know that sin is coming, understand, hey, it's coming, and be like, she's forgiven. It's going to happen. I know it's going to happen. So just be ready and forgive it right away. Yes, in for the forgiveness video, you'll see more about, we'll talk more about that. But we want an atmosphere in marriage in which we can help each other with our sins. If we're constantly shocked or angry at the sins that are happening, not talking, giving the silent treatment, or, and not talking for a few days, that's not going to be helpful. It starts with welcoming input in our own lives, being vulnerable, being humble to say, honey, I'm a sinner, I'm going to need your help. I want you to be able to talk to me about my sins. Sarah started out her master's degree, and the first class was what is wrong with you and trying to fix it. So like, what are your main sins? So she comes to me, she's like, what are my sins? I said, we ain't going there. You figure that out, because I am not going there, right? And I think that's super normal. Like, I'm not going to tell you what's wrong with you. You figure that out. So how do we get to an atmosphere in our marriage where we can share with one another? I think I heard I don't know if it was an article or something, but it was like a book. Maybe it says usually one person can share and the other person can't. I'll let you guys figure that one out. But we need to be humble and understanding that we are sinners and we do need help. And the gospel is that, right? We need to understand that we can't get to heaven on our own. We can't be reconciled to God on our own. It took Jesus dying for us. It takes following Jesus. It takes saying, God, yes, your way is right. A repentant heart. Like, it's not me. It's trusting in the Lord and not on our own understanding. That's what salvation is. That's what the gospel is. And so we should be able to admit that. And even with our spouse, we should be able to understand that we need help. What my wife has been saying, what's it like being married to me? Can we answer that? Can we ask that question and be able to take it without blowing up? With that, we need to have wisdom, courage, meekness, humility. We need to extend grace to each other in this process of sanctification. That's a very long process. As we meditate on the gospel, it develops our vulnerability in understanding that we're sinners, just like our spouse. God gives us grace, so I can give some grace to her as well. And Lord willing, she gives grace to me. And we work through this together, and we can grow. And that it takes time. This is not something where you watch this video and you say, all right, honey, let's be completely vulnerable. Let's attack our sin, attack the sins. That's another principle. Attack the sin, not the person. Let's focus on attacking the sins and never attacking you. That's good. That's something you can already put to practice. But it's hard. But you need to choose your heart, and that's the next video. Choose your heart.